everybody, welcome to first episode of Nadi Digital Economy Malaysia after the Chinese New Year holidays, which I mean, of course, it's a 2-week festival, but I'm saying after the anointed 2-day, public holiday, which I feel Dzof ended up being 5 days for a lot of Malaysians. Yeah.
Yes. Well, this Malaysians always like that, right? Any chance to take a holiday in between.
Man, tell me about it. So
in between holidays, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. So, which is why I'm not in red, and Dzof also is not in, wearing his Harimau, super cool Harimau t-shirt. But we're going to start with some interesting stories from this week, and yet again, 5G, Malaysia's 5G, drama, saga, controversy, soap opera, whatever you want to call it, has forced its way into our show. Because this time, for very valid reason, Ralph Marshall, the CEO of Digital, National A Bhd, has put forward an incredibly thorough and robust explanation. I won't even say defense, right? Explanation of 13 questions that the Member of Parliament for Serdang, Ong Kian Ming, has posed. Now, those of you who follow this interesting saga will know that, hey, most of these questions have been answered before, have been asked before, posed before. And it's interesting that Ralph Marshall has put his name to it and has come out very forcefully. I will let Dzof take lead with this, then I'll jump in.
Yes. So, Karam says thorough, I say really long. I mean, that's the way it's like pages and pages. The letter.
Words, man.
What happened was that YB Dr. Ong Kian Ming had made a media statement, I think, on the first week of February. And Ralph Marshall, this is Ralph Marshall's letter to the editor of it was an open letter, right? And it's in response to that. So it's really long. I'll try to summarize it as much as I can. Basically, this is the points I picked out. One is that Ralph Marshall says it cannot be left to the private sector to implement 5G rollout at its own pace, because it will be driven by profit motivations. These are his words, by the way.
Yeah.
He says, quote, "There is no urgency at MNOs to implement 5G as they were content to further sweat the 4G network," which is a phrase now that's stuck in my brain, and that they own and were making substantial returns from. If the country had been waited for the telcos, 5G network would have only been delayed to 2023 or 2024, and it would have cost over 30 billion ringgit. This is Ralph Marshall's claim, by the way, that if the telcos had developed their own 5G infrastructure. Just as a reminder, DNB says they can roll out the 5G they've rolled it out last year, right?
Already, yes.
In a way. And it will only cost 16.5 billion ringgit over 10 years. That's what his claim is. Now, one of the big things is that the counter proposal, it's weird to have a counter proposal after DNB has been set up and after they've started their work.
And the counter was made 1 year ago, right?
Yeah. So the counter proposal is to set up a second consortium, if you like, of telcos who would then be rolling out 5G at their own pace. And this is known as the dual wholesale network. Ralph Marshall says that it is unlikely that DNB in its current form will be able to survive if there's a second wholesale network provider. And he says, if DNB does fail, what will happen is this second wholesale provider will become a private SWN monopoly. So for those who are complaining about a single wholesale provider, presence of a second wholesale provider, according to Ralph, will in fact, will in fact mean the demise of DNB. Yes, single wholesale. And then Ralph Marshall kind of ends by saying that 5G spectrum is a limited national resource that really needs to be developed for the benefit of the rakyat. And in much the same way, he gives the example of Malaysia's petroleum. Yeah. Now, Karam, is it incredibly harsh of Ralph Marshall to criticize telcos in Malaysia for trying to make money? Fundamentally, his argument is that telcos in Malaysia would roll out 5G slower They will only roll it out when they see that there's profit to be made. But isn't that basically, is it unfair to say? Because it makes it sound like the telcos in Malaysia don't care about the rakyat.
I think clearly their first priority, the shareholders, right? First priority, first and foremost, is the shareholders. So that's not surprising. That's an interesting question when you say, is it unfair? He has been already been treated unfairly also, right? So he's been whacked. People have brought up, a legal case in other countries against him, his credibility, which is quite incredible. They're just so desperate to smear anything on DNB and try to derail, an initiative the government set up and a strategy the government has taken, because, as Raf also mentions, the telcos failed to seize the opportunity when it was given to them. It was laid at their feet, and they failed to, because they cannot, because they're competing with each other, right? Tooth and nail. It's hard for them to work together when you want to try to get every advantage you can. So he's just laying out there, and Raf is a straight shooter. Everybody knows that. So this is just Raf being Raf, right? And I love it, because I think if you take this together, his response together with Tunku Zafrul, the Minister of Finance, I think in no country's 5G strategy and rollout has the people of that country seen this level of transparency with the thinking and the sequence of steps that went behind this. I just absolutely love it. And I think two things I want to mention, because we can go on and on about his life. It's 4,000 word, right, to reply to Ong Kian Ming. And I think that
I mean, that was a big summary I did. It wasn't everything.
I know, exactly. But I think it also shows that the respect and the credibility that Ong Kian Ming has as a member of parliament, right? When he raised these issues again, they said, hey guys, it's Ong, it's Dr. Ong, let's put in the time and effort, and they listed it out all again. It's very beautifully done. Everyone should bookmark whichever article they choose to pick, right? And always bookmark Tunku Zafrul's, although his was in Malay and DNA translated to English, bookmark these two, and you really get a snapshot of how a government wants to try to roll out a cutting edge technology. Sorry, this was cutting edge 2 years ago. It's not cutting edge today. Okay, because and many countries are rolling it out. Bangladesh has rolled it out also, Dhaka. And I was making the point that if we fall back and say that we should have a second network, let's be fair, telcos are upset, they got shareholders to answer to, and they think apparently they can do it better, faster, cheaper. If the government falls for that, right, slay of hand, and we do that, we're not going to see 5G for a while. Of course, they can say, hey, look, we already have 5G in Malaysia. DNB has rolled it out in TPM. Zulera told me it's been rolled out in TPM. You got it in, I think, in Cyberjaya, and you got it in some areas of KL, but it's not going to move beyond that, because DNB has to reassess its whole business model and its financial projections, right? It's going to be a lot of pain, because you're going to go and rework contracts all, and that's going to slow the rollout in other places. And the point I'm coming to is that migrant workers from countries like Bangladesh, and definitely Bangladesh, got Dhaka is sort of 5G now, right? And Indonesia, you've got some pockets of 5G in Indonesia. When they come to Malaysia, they're going to demand hardship allowance, okay? I'm just so embarrassed as a Malaysian. And remember, I told you that I'm going to collaborate with Namawi to produce a song about this major embarrassment all Malaysians have to live with. And by the way, I hope you caught Namawi's viral video he did, right? Of that, I think he did a Hindi song, right? A parody of a Hindi song, right? Which apparently is getting 1 million views a day, right? And talking about, you be my roti, I be your curry or whatever. Go and watch that. That's awesome. I'm a huge fan of Namawi's genius and creativity, and his refusal to be boxed in, right? Awesome. But anyway, I'll partner Namawi to come up with my version of, don't cry for me 5G. If ever the government rolls this back. Anyway, quickly, one thing he mentioned to Ong is that, look, Beauty Ong is saying, hey, why are we dispelling with the opportunity to make money from a auction? And Raf reminded that Malaysia has never gone the auction approach. And I think Ong Kian Ming brought this up because previously some is a cross group of member of parliaments, right? Sometime end of last year, also brought up the issue. They raised some issue about, hey, this doesn't seem unfair. Are we, forfeiting, 10 billion ringgit in expected, auction fees raised? And he said, we've never done an auction before. So people who sold this to those a member of parliament did not tell them that Malaysia has never done this before. We have done a beauty contest, and for 3G, the rate was set as 50 million ringgit per spectrum assignee, only 50 million, because the government wanted them to roll it out fast, okay, back then, in like 2002 or 2001. So there's been no auction, one. And another thing is, which I thought was, which I didn't know, they said that the single wholesale network has failed. Mexico tried to do it, it failed. Guys,
that's right.
That way, we're going to fail. And it turns out that it was apparently it was not a government owned, right? So it's a private company and partially owned by the government. And important issue is that it was actually not a single wholesale network. E&Y did the research to ensure we don't make the mistakes that that Mexico do, and it's actually owned by a consortium. It's a complex, ownership structure. You got operators, you got retirement funds, you got investment financial institution, and its objective was to maximize profits also. So it was not demand-led, super important. So this fact that, whoa, SWN has failed before, don't go that way, that's why nobody has tried it, totally not true. So please, I urge all of you, read this article, from wherever you want to. It doesn't have to be from DNB and DNA and embed the learning points there. Fantastic. I think there's been a very, sneaky approach, by the people who want to make sure this is derailed. And I say sneaky and evil and dark, and malicious, and Dzof, I'm running out of words here. Okay, but
yeah, no, I feel that you apart from the Mexico example, the other thing that Ref Marshall mentioned was that he claims that Brunei have tried an SWN model, and they
are doing it.
Sorry, they're doing it, and they in sharp contrast with the critics, what they're doing seems to be working. Yeah. So he says that in Brunei, the telcos have reduced their tariffs and providing higher speed and data plans, and I mean, again, of course, Ralph Marshall being who DNB is trying to paint the picture that what they're doing can work, but it does seem to puncture the criticism that SWN model will not work.
It blows a huge hole. But let's leave it at that. Let's move on, right? Because like I said, we can go on, and we're already like 13 minutes into this, right? So
sorry.
No, but this is super important, because if the government makes a mistake and backtracks and say, okay, let's do double, right? Let's do two networks, right? Make them happy. And you seem like you're listening to industry, so it's going to be a disaster. We're not going to see 5G for a while, but I do bet that Maxis will be the first one to roll it out if they do. But if Maxis is forced to collaborate with the other two players, then it's going to be delayed, right? Because Maxis, then they got to form a consortium, they got to agree, and that's going to take a while. And Maxis is going to be very frustrated. I know they can roll it out fast. They would have been. Maxis was ready in 2019, but they had to collaborate with the rest. So this, in a way, has been unfair. And Maxis, I know they're chomping at the bits to roll out. But the government has decided on this approach. Let's just go with it, yeah. Let's just go with it and let us get 5G going and rock and roll with 5G, man, or Bhangra with 5G. Anyway, back to now. This is a startup which obviously which will leverage on 5G, I think. And by the way, we're not talking about this, but I think there's a press release we ran to say that Ericsson, DNB, and Meranti, which is under TPM, right, is actually they're going to roll out. They've already rolled out 5G, by the way, right? But they're going to create a 5G development hub in TPM, so that the businesses which are in TPM can leverage on 5G to experiment, to break things, to damage things, right? To learn from the mistakes and come up with 5G robust business models and products and services. So, I know Meranti and Zolara is very excited. They want to get 5G going and rocking, and it's apparently already been rolled out in TPM. And now they're just going to work together to create some use cases. So hopefully in TPM, Meranti will engage with its user base to multi-stakeholder approach to work with DNB and 5G to get some use cases rolled out fast. But back to this now. So this is a fintech, a Malaysian fintech, which has raised $2 million US from a Indian VC called Sequoia India.
Yes.
And through their research is like probably the Scale Up Malaysia of India, right? Which is an accelerator they launched. And you've raised 2 million, which sounds impressive, and it is. But what I love about this story very quickly is that this is the first Malaysian startup that Sequoia India has said that, hey, we're going to give them money. We think they're doing something interesting in the fintech space. You don't have to be in the fintech space, okay? They're giving 2 million to this Malaysian company. And Iimmpact, which is spelled with IIMM, and actually DNA is going to be talking to the founders this coming week for an interview with the two co-founders. What's interesting is that they were launched in December of 2017. So imagine this is a company that's already been 5 years in the game. The credit to the founders for Alex Tan, and I think it's one is Alex Tan and the other one is Kelvin Lee. Yeah. They've been in the game for almost 5 years. So they've fought foot and nail, they've scratched and they've clawed and they've beat their way to staying in the game to now that they've raised this 2 million US. And of course, the key was for them before was that they were a scale-up Malaysia company, and I think they got like maybe 250,000 ringgit in 2020, right? 2020. Yeah. So fantastic for them. And this validates their business model. Another key point is that they actually were adopting a different business model. They wanted to go into the loyalty space. When they got into Scale Up Malaysia say, no, your technology is robust. We think that you can do this, go into the fintech space. And now they are like a one-stop app that companies can use, right, to accelerate the adoption of any fintech service they have, because you're using legacy system. You can now leverage on their platform to clearly roll out. I love this story. It shows that first, Scale Up Malaysia is an incredibly powerful platform that companies should try to get into. And two, the founders have stayed in the game for so long that now they're seeing light at the end of the tunnel. Wonderful story. So let's move on to the third story, Dzof, and I'll let you take lead with this.
Well, the third story is just a simple announcement. Yeah. What was formerly AirAsia has now turned into Capital A, and the announcement, Capital A Bhd, sorry, Capital AB. Yeah. And the announcement is that they have appointed Tan Sri Jamaludin Ibrahim as the non-executive chairman. And for those who, well, you probably know Tan Sri Jamaludin was formerly the group CEO for Axiata, and he was also the CEO of Maxis.
Yeah.
So he brings with him like this huge amount of experience into that role, right? And I mentioned to Karam just now, I said, well, you know, I mean, the press announcement says he will be a mentor and provide guidance. I mean, is that all? And you said, Karam, no, you said that's actually a big deal, right?
No, because look, Tan Sri Jamal is a global Malaysian, right? I mean, he will open doors like Tony probably cannot. So you just have when you to bring in Tan Sri Jamal, I don't think Tan Sri Jamal is desperate for the recognition or whatever. So Tony would have sold him a global story, right? But I think Asia, of course, the footprint is in Asia, is strong enough, is valuable enough market. Obviously, Tony is looking for the US listing, and you want a chairman who's got the gravitas, right, and the credibility to be at that level. And I think absolutely Tan Sri Jamal is, and welcome back into the digital economy, right, Tan Sri Jamal, and we'll see what he does. But incredibly impressive that Tony was able to convince, right, Jamal, that, hey, you should lend your name, right, and your expertise and your network to us, and we're going to go places. So let's see what let's see what Capital A does, right, especially with these various digital plays, and watch this company, right. So let's move on now to the next story, because we're running out of time. And this is where a CGS, which is I think a Chinese company, right, partnered with CIMB or Nazir Razak, and I would have I would have lost money. I would have bet that Nazir Razak would have been the chairman that Tony appointed, but he didn't.
Well, I thought you were going to say that, because yes, that Nazir Razak would have been the next guy, but yes, obviously for whatever reason they but doesn't matter. CGS-CIMB is doing something.
Yeah. So they just partnered with Endeavor Malaysia, which DNA also has partnered with for our Harimau X startup. So, so you can just search that keyword on DNA for what that is about. So they are partnered together to want to produce a series of high impact 6 entrepreneur stories, right? Talking about, and both parties hope that, when I say CGS-CIMB and Endeavor Malaysia, hope that it will inspire entrepreneurs, right? Through knowledge sharing, through inspiration, entrepreneurs can get some ideas on how to grow and scale regional global companies. And this is what's said by Ruzi Rani Ajit. I don't know who he is, very cool name though, right? And he says that we want to inspire them. And they've actually I collaborated with Khoo Soo Chuang, a former colleague of mine from The Edge, a very notorious personality, right? And who also hosts a Do More show. And I'm just kidding. Chuang is a good friend. He's going to be the moderator for the show to try to unveil and try to dig up interesting snippets that these entrepreneurs they're going to feature. And I think they've already done one series, which is with the CEO of Yinson Berhad, Lau Chen Yuan. And the next up is Fadza Anwar, and then you've got Eric Cheng coming out. And I found it interesting because there were 2 digital entrepreneurs, right, coming up. So it again shows that companies in Malaysia realize the digital economy is flat and center now. And, even for entrepreneur talk like that, where you inspire them, they've already picked, 2 digital entrepreneurs. And I know Yinson also, right, Chen Yuan is doing a lot of things where he can around the digital space. So let's just move on to the last story, Dzof. Let's talk about what digital bank Negara is doing.
So we've been talking about the digital bank space in Malaysia. We've been talking about the fact that all these consortiums had submitted bids. And finally, the governor of Bank Negara has announced that we are, quote, in the advanced stage of assessing applications banks and target to announce digital banks at the end of March. So yes, only 1 more month or 2 more months, depending on how you count your months.
What's significant is that she said we expect the entry of these digital banks to accelerate the digitization of our incumbent banks. Very interesting. I think the incumbent banks are all rapidly moving towards digitization for sure. But I think, well, maybe what I see the entry of these digital banks will do is to also then impel the traditional banks to compete with them in the space where you're going to offer the underserved and the unbanked. So that's where the level of competition is going to ratchet up. So, but very interesting time. So let's see what happens here. And I'm sure we'll be regularly talking about digital banks also, right, Dzof? This next.
Yeah, I think this is going to be, it's because these guys who get these licenses, if they're not the existing incumbent banks, they're going to be making a play for the segments that the traditional banks aren't looking at. So you're going to see probably a lot of innovation, a lot of very interesting things coming up by the end of the year.
Absolutely. So when you're talking about interesting things, we hope you found this show interesting. We hope you find Nadi interesting. We look forward to seeing you again next week.